Following program was provided by a valued member of our local community. Rogers TV is proud to support local producers and share local voices, ideas, and opinions. For more information, please visit our website.
Welcome everyone to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, neighbors, really anyone who's caring for someone else. My name is Katie Muirhead and I'm going to be your moderator for today. And before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that we're on today. While we meet on a virtual platform with folks joining us from across the province, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. I'm joining you today from the city of St. Catharines in the Niagara region, which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous peoples. If you'd like to learn more about the lands you're joining from, you can find out more at native-land.ca. Have you ever wondered if the medications your care recipient takes is still right for them? Medications can offer significant benefits, but as we age, our bodies may become more sensitive to their effects. Some medications that were once helpful may no longer be necessary or could even cause harm. In today's webinar, we hope to provide you with valuable insights and practical tips to help you ensure that your care recipient's medications are still needed and beneficial. We are pleased to welcome Gloria Georges, an accomplished pharmacist and healthcare leader whose career spans both clinical and industry settings. Gloria holds a pharmacy degree from the University of Montreal, business management diploma from McGill University, and has completed the marketing executive program at Queen's University. She's practiced in hospital and emergency settings, held national leadership roles in the pharmaceutical industry, and currently serves as an independent consultant. Gloria brings a wealth of experience in clinical care, pharmacy operations, patient support programs, and access to complex therapies. She's also a dedicated board member of Pharmacists Without Borders Canada, where she advocates for equitable access to medications and care. Today, she joins us through her work with the Canadian Medication Appropriateness and Deprescribing Network, a national collaboration of clinicians, researchers, policymakers, and individuals with lived experience, all committed to improving the safe and appropriate use of medications for all Canadians. Welcome, Gloria.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie, for that lovely introduction. And welcome. Welcome to everyone to this presentation of medication as we age. And it's an information session to support you in all the great work you do as caregiver. So let's just start. Our plan today, I want to explain why we become more sensitive to the effect of medication, identify situation where there's potential harm of medication can outweigh the potential benefits, and also describe how this is everyone's responsibility to overview medication, to have a voice for those who don't necessarily have a strong voice. So it's really a team effort between patient, caregiver, healthcare professional to work together to prevent harm from medication. This presentation is made possible through a financial contribution from the Canadian Drug Agency, and the view I express do not necessarily represent the view of the Canadian Drug Agency. I have no conflict of interest to declare in relation to this presentation. So Katie already did the LAN acknowledgement for I'm more located in the Greater Toronto, Ontario So we are located on Mississauga of the Credit First Nation land. But I also am going to mention that our organization acknowledged that our network members and partner lives in dozens of communities across Canada. And these communities are located on the traditional land and territory and treaty territories. Also, our organization has been quite active working with the Indigenous. So we're committed to building strong relationship with Indigenous community and to co-creating initiative that reflects community priorities around medication use, rooted in the Indigenous way of knowing, doing, and being. So let's get right into it. Why do we take medication? Well, we take medication for better health. We take medication to cure disease like infection. You go to the doctor, you have an infection, or your kid's got an ear infection, or you cut yourself, so you will get an antibiotic, and then that will cure that problem for you. Also, medication are used to manage chronic condition like diabetes, high blood pressure, also used to relieve symptoms. You know, you go for a walk, you feel tired, you might take some Tylenol. If you have aches and pains, you wake up, you have a headache. So you do relieve your symptom, and that's why you take medication. So overall, taking medication helps prolonging our life expectancy. So as we get older, we manage more chronic disease, and these conditions requires medication so we can live a longer, healthier life. So I have this disclaimer for you. I do not want anyone or anyone that is under your care or family to stop their medication after my talk. That is something you have to promise, because any decision to stop your medication should be discussed with your primary healthcare provider, your physician, your pharmacist. So what's all the fuss about medication? You know, pharmacists, we love medication, but there is a lot to know about medication, and like was mentioned earlier, about potential harms. So we have to be serious about using our medication. I'm going to share a couple of numbers for you. So it's about the percentage of community dwelling of older adults in Canada that take 5 or more prescription medication. So older adults in Canada are described as 65-year-old and 55 years and older. So 5 or more medication prescription. It might surprise you to know that 62% of 65-year-old and older are using 5 or more prescription medication. Then if I jump to 10 or more prescription medication, you probably think that seems like a lot. It's 24%. So now these are numbers that are for the 65 years and older. Now if we jump to the group that is 85 and older, so the one that are taking 10 or more medication is 36%. So we had about 24% on the 65-year-old cohort and over. 85, it jumps to 36%. So 2 out of 5 elderly over 85 takes more than 10 prescription drugs. So that's a lot of medication for someone to take. So older adult and their health. So there's 7.5 million, according to the census of 2022, there is 7.3 million Canadians that are over age 65. And I'm happy to share that 90% lives independently in community. 56% report being in good health, so that's really good. And about 80% live with one or more chronic condition. So you probably ask, okay, this leaves about a 15-20% individual that we describe them as the frail group. So these are the ones that are living with a lot of chronic condition. They're not able, and you likely know some of these individuals. They're living, or their well-being and ability to do their normal activities very reduced, and they need help. And that's the group that we also want to make sure we don't forget about, we take care of them, and we become a voice for them. Older adult or a diverse group. I think I remember when you're younger, you think, oh yeah, we have all these different ethnic and culture diversity. And then as you get older, it seems that we put a lot of these elderly individuals in the same bucket as older people. But you have to keep in mind that there are still different culture, different background, and they have a wide variety of norms and belief regarding medication use. So you always have to keep that in mind. That is so important. And depending on their context and their background and their history, they may have a different approach to medication. So I always like to mention that. Try not to, we try to put everyone that's older in kind of this big box. Well, they're senior, they're older, but they still are very vibrant and diverse group. So let's jump into why does aging make us more sensitive to medication? So we often need to take more medication to manage chronic condition as we get older. So as you get older, it's great to get older. You might be more likely to have different chronic condition. You or folks under your care, your parents, your grandparents, and even young individual might have chronic condition as well. So it's not only the elderly. So, and as you get older, you have to watch because the benefit of the medication may not be as good as it was initially. So hence the importance of reviewing your medication. So our body change as we age. Honestly, I think we all realize that. I know I am. My skin is very different than when I was in my 20s. If I go and exercise, I feel a little more achy the next day. If I have, 2 glasses of wine or that kind of night, like the next morning, things are not as clear in my head. So, and I'm a healthy individual. So just sharing that with you, just to keep you engaged to this talk. So really, seriously, our body changes as we age. So the brain becomes more sensitive to the effect of the drug. The medications stay longer in our body because we have less muscle and we have more body fat. And our liver and kidney are getting older just as we are. And liver and kidney are key essential organs that are used to process medication and to eliminate medication and to make sure we have the proper enzyme to manage all the medication or the medication that we take. So our brain doesn't work as efficiently, medications stay longer, and our liver and kidney also take longer to process and may not process as when we were younger. So you're probably going, okay, there's elderly that are more at risk. That's for sure. People over 65. People with multiple chronic condition are also more at risk of experiencing harm from their medication. And women. So you probably wonder, why women? Why are we more susceptible to have harm from our medication? Well, the female biology and physiology increase our risk of harmful effect of medication. Women live longer than men. We take more medication because we consult more with our healthcare practitioner when we have ailments. So we do take more medication and we suffer for more chronic disease. So that is the reason why women are at higher risk. Now I want to switch gear and talk about medication overload and why does it matter. So you might have heard of medication overload or polypharmacy, so meaning a lot of medication. So in healthcare, we define medication overload, meaning we're taking combination of medication that does more harm than good. Medication overload increase the risk of harmful effect. So what are these potential harmful effects when you take, as we saw earlier, 10 prescription medication? So let's go into looking at the risk of medication overload. So it increases the risk of falls and fracture. it increased like memory problem, like we were saying, or brain doesn't function or as well as when we're not taking any medication. And also the risk of interaction. That one is really important, that when you take more than one medication, 2, 3, 4, 5, then there's a more risk of these medication interacting with each other and not doing what each medication is supposed to do. And also hospitalization. I used to work in the emergency in a hospital setting as a pharmacist, and then I would see elderly patient coming into emergency. And then they would get organized and they would feel better, go back home, and somehow they would come back to emerge because there was some potential interaction with their medication or they were not tolerating it well. And the hospitalization due to side effect for medication is 6 to 12% of hospitalization in older adult. So it's over half of these medication overload or medication interaction could be avoided, and they may go undetected. So that is something that we're doing education about, those medication overload potential, how to maybe identify it, so we prevent those hospitalization for elderly patients. Also, medication overload, it's higher risk of forgetting medication, making mistake while you're managing it. So when the patient manage it, so that's also another risk. So when I talk about prescription medication, you probably go, yeah, I know my med for prescription. But prescription medication is only part of the medication and the medication overload. You also have to think about the natural health product that you could be using, the vitamin, the supplement, the herbal. We think, yeah, it's no big deal. I'm taking this St. John's wort, or I'm taking evening primrose, and then you don't think necessarily that's a medication, but it is. Traditional medicine like plants, animal, and mineral-based medicine, and the over-the-counter medication that most of us are very familiar with. So just keep that in mind. In addition, so we're saying natural product, traditional medicine, over-the-counter. In addition, when you think of your medication or those under your caretaking or your family member, we also need to think about alcohol, cannabis, and other recreational drugs. So alcohol and cannabis and other recreational drugs, of course, they can interact with medication and increase the risk of harm. So it's always important that you share that with your healthcare provider. You have to share what you're comfortable with your healthcare practitioner. But just my message to you is like, feel free to share that with your healthcare practitioner, your physician, your pharmacist, your nurse, because it might have an impact on your medication and could cause very serious side effects. Now, so we went to medication overload, the type of medications. So now I want to talk about what we call risky medications. So what is a risky medication? A risky medication is when you take a medication and there is a non-pharmaceutical option for you that you could use, or what we call a safer alternative treatment for the same condition. So I'm going to talk about sleeping pill. So sleeping pill are risky med because they affect your brain in very different ways. So the sleeping pill will do what the sleeping pill is supposed to do. It will slow you down. It would just put your brain in a sleepy mood, and then your whole body, your brain coordinating everything. So the sleeping pill is doing what it's supposed to do. The side effect of that is like your reaction time might be lower. If you're trying to plan something, you might be not as coordinated in the planning. It may affect your memory, your attention, your concentration, and your coordination. So sleeping pill, like I said, they do what they're supposed to do. In average, you'll fall asleep 14 minutes faster if you take a sleeping pill. But you have to keep in mind that the risk of taking a sleeping pill is that You might have more fall and fracture. Let's say you took sleeping pill at night, you're on your morning commute, and then your reflex are not as good, so risk of motor vehicle, or if you operate heavy equipment in your job, then you may not be as good as coordinating, and it could also cause memory problem. So what can we do instead of taking sleeping pill, or if we do, thinking about maybe some other option? There is safe alternative for sleeping pill called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or sleep therapy. There's also sleep school. So it's a non-medication approach that helps you sleep, develop good sleeping habits. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but I would encourage you to go to mysleepwell.ca. It's a Canadian-based organization promoting sleep therapy without medication. So that's one example of a risky medication. So there's quite a few other risky medication that I won't cover here. I just wanted to do the example of the sleeping pill so you understand what a risky medication is. So Canadian over 65 that take potentially inappropriate medication, this was a survey that was done, again, people over 65, and it shows that about 40% of men and 50% of women are using or taking some inappropriate medication for their condition. There is a cost to society. The risk of medication, the cost of risky medication, is for Canada. They spend over $1 billion. We spend over $1 billion per year on potentially harmful prescription medications. So these medications are expensive. You might, like I said, lose some work time. You might be not able to function as well. You might fall. So there's a cost associated to it. The other part that we have to think about it more and more is like medication harm the environment. So the more medications are out there, they do promote greenhouse gas emissions from the manufacturing of those medications. I'm not saying it's all bad, but I'm just saying more and more we're realizing that just like hospital having a lot of greenhouse emissions. So overall healthcare in general is not the best for the environment. So the medication, you might say, well, please take all your medication to your pharmacist when you don't want to take them, or if you visit someone who has a shoebox with all their vials, we see that. Take them to the pharmacy. Do not inadvertently, put them in your garbage or flush them in your toilet. Medication do get in the land by the excretion as individual when we excrete those medication to urine and to our stool, and also animals like cattle that might take antibiotics, then it also ends up in the environment. So the good news is there's now there's an association of pharmacists for the environment looking at this very carefully. So now I just want to share the story of Fiona. So Fiona is a 69-year-old. She's been feeling lightheaded. She's been feeling like energyless. She said she almost fell twice, but then she grabbed herself on her furniture. So there were not a lot of major complication for her. And then she feels anxious. She doesn't want to go out with coffee for a friend. And then she does take medication for blood pressure and diabetes. So how can we help Fiona? How can patient, caregiver, and healthcare professional work together to prevent harm from medication? So this is why we talk about deprescribing. So you're probably wondering, why would a pharmacist talk about deprescribing? That's our job. We manage medication. Well, deprescribing is really about reducing or stopping some medication that may not be beneficial. So we just want to make sure the deprescribing activities to make sure you have the best quality of life with the medication that you take. So I just want to make that clear because some people are wondering, why would you talk about deprescribing? Isn't that what you do as a pharmacist? So also, we often think a doctor would prescribe medication, we take it, and that's it. We take it for a long period of time, we take it just for 2 weeks, a month, and then that's it. I think deprescribing is about really understanding that it's more than that. So the medication needs to be reassessed. And then we can decide we would stop, or we would lower the dose, or we would readjust. And then you decide, yeah, we'll continue this medication, or we might use some other medication. So deprescribing is not necessarily about stopping it. It's more we would reassess. It could be stop. It could be adjusting. It's just appropriate prescription of medication that an individual really needs. So how are we going to do that? You're probably going, well, this sounds really great, but how are we going to do that? So you can ask for a medication review. So you can ask your physician, or you can ask your local pharmacy to do a medication review. So the medication review will help you review your medication with a healthcare professional. You can ask a nurse as well. And then looking at all the medication that you take, like I said, there's not only the prescription medication, there's natural product, there's over-the-counters, there's traditional medicine, not to forget alcohol, cannabis, and other recreational drugs. So you can ask that. Some pharmacy will book an appointment with you to do it, and then we'll find an area in the pharmacy that is conducive of doing a medication review. You might have heard of MedCheck in retail or community pharmacy. So we realize that Fiona really suffers from medication overload, and she needs a medication review. So how are we going to do that? So like I just mentioned, you make an appointment. Then you obtain the list of your medication. You come prepared, ask your pharmacy. Oh, just back on the appointment. Sometimes if you go to your community pharmacy, they may ask you, do you have time to do a med check? It could be 15, 20 minutes. So you have to be able to have the time to do it. But some pharmacy do it without appointment. With your doctor, nurse, you likely need to take an appointment. So when you come prepared, you have to ask your pharmacy. The pharmacy would usually have a list of all your medication. And I encourage everyone to do most of their medication at one pharmacy, so they have all the medication that you take. And like I mentioned, over-the-counter, supplement, vitamins. So you have to have the list of everything that you take. And if you forget, the pharmacist will likely probe for it and ask you for all other medication that you take beside the prescription. Before your appointment, you also want to ask yourself, we don't know how, as a healthcare professional, we don't know how you feel about those medications. You don't know what's your reaction. So you know how these medications are affecting you. You know if you're having a problem with it. And then what is your health goal and value? Different time in life, our health goals are different, just like our fitness goal, just like our career goal, things change. And then you have to think, if the physician decides to stop a medication, how would you feel about that? Especially if you've been taking something for a long time. So there's always that you have to keep in mind. Some questions you can list, and again, the slides are going to be shared. So why am I taking this medication? I would say that the vast majority of individuals that I've talked to, they know why they take their medication for. So, but you may want to just do a check for that. And if they're not taking it for the right indication, that's where the medication review is so important. The potential benefit, can it affect my memory or cause me to fall? So you might realize, or someone under your care, that their balance is not as good anymore, and always do that. A bit of confusion or something. So this might be related to medication. And can I stop or reduce the dose of the medication? Sometimes medication are started at a higher dose, and we reduce the dose, or sometimes they start at a lower dose and the dose needs to be increased. And then how do I follow up? So if you change my meds, like I just take it, and so no, there'll be your healthcare provider, they'll be there with you. There'll be a reassessment with your physician. So really what I want to say is like, it is a team effort. So the decision just doesn't fall on the individual. The individual, like I say, the person taking the medication knows how they feel. They know their body, they know their action. And also it's good to know that different individual will take the same drug and will have different reaction depending how you metabolize the drug. There's more and more information about that. So, for example, someone might take ibuprofen for a headache and it works well, and then somebody else will need to take a Tylenol to have the same effect. So sometimes individuals, same drug, have different reactions. So that's why it's important for the individual to share with healthcare practitioner. And of course, there's a healthcare provider. Your physician knows your illness, your pharmacist know your medication, your nurse know a lot about you, and then your caregiver as well. So involving everybody in a team effort. So you're probably saying, well, this sounds really good, Gloria, but how do I go? How do I go and just ask about, my medication, about deprescribing? It could be daunting. It could be like, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I think they know what they're doing, and I'm sure they're just doing what's right for me. So I just want to empower you to feel that, a lot of people have shared that they have challenge with starting to do this deprescribing activity, addressing medication overload. So if you think about some of your challenge, then you can put them in the chat. It's good to know. So we keep building education session to help on that. So healthcare provider doesn't have the time. I've heard a lot of people say, when I go see my doctor, it's one condition, doesn't have the time to talk about many conditions. So it could be very challenging to ask for a medication review or ask question. Also, if you've seen a specialist, you go see a specialist because you have a more care, you need the care of a specialist, then your family doctor, would be reluctant to change a prescription for your specialist. So how do you navigate that? Another one is like, should I ask about medication that, is working well for me? Do you want to ask if we should discontinue? I think you should. You should ask about all the medication you're taking. And then what if my symptom return if I stop my medication, right? And that's possible. When you de-escalate a medication, then, you might have a little bit of side effect for a bit. So you can cope with that for a bit and it'll get better. So with the support of your nurse, your physician, and your pharmacist, it might just help you. Like I said, it's a team effort that we're there to help each other, and you have to share that, saying, when I lower the dose, it's not as good, or when we stop. So there's always an adjustment. So if we look at Fiona, so we did the medication review for Fiona, and then the physician did that, and then the physician realized that one of her new medication for diabetes was contributing to lower her blood pressure. So Fiona having lower blood pressure, it's good. Her gait was not as good, and that's what she had those near fall, and then also she felt tired, so she didn't want to go out. So 2 weeks later, after adjusting, one of her medication was stopped. Then she felt better and she resumed her normal activity. So a message also I want is to be on the lookout for medication overload. Like, how do you know if someone can care in your care is experiencing medication overload? So they could say stuff like, my memory is playing tricks on me. I have a hard time remembering. Oh, I have this bruise on my arm. So you could say, what's Mary? What's the bruise on your arm? Oh, that's nothing. I just fell last week, but I'm sure it's nothing. Or she might say, I'm not coming to the group activity this week because, don't tell anybody, but I have trouble holding my urine lately. So these are a bit of red flag that if you hear that with some of your patient or some of the people you care for, or your family or friends or neighbors, then you might say, hey, maybe we could talk about a medication review, or you can review it with your pharmacist or your doctor. Or if someone says, oh, I'm so annoyed, I take all this medication, do I really have to take them? It is so cumbersome. So these are just red flags, that example for you to identify. So what else can you do? Well, keep yourself informed about your medication and why you take them. You, when I say you, it's like I mentioned, people under your care, yourself, it could be your family, it could be your friends, it could be your neighbors. Engage in discussion with the doctor, pharmacist about deprescribing to really see if there's option for you. And then spread the word like I'm doing today. Ask questions. I encourage you to ask questions. Be proactive, yeah, be on the lookout if you hear somebody who does it, having potentially side effect from their medication. So you can check out on our website. We have a lot of free information. You go on deprescribingnetwork.ca. It's available online. It's in different language. Lots of resource for you. Please visit our website. There's a lot of good information. And then there is the Sleeping Canada website to help find non-medication sleeping option. And there's a lot of article. Again, the website is deprescribingnetwork.ca. We even have talk about medication workshop series. So a lot of good information. So I'm going to stop here for a question and answer. And I think I will just stop my slide.
Great. Thanks so much, Gloria, for all that really helpful information. As folks know, we are recording and you'll get those slides as well. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some great tips for all our caregivers. So before we get to our Q&A, I'd like to take a quick moment to remind folks to complete the webinar evaluation that's going to land in your chat box shortly. Helps us get some feedback on how we can continue to improve our programs and services. And you get a chance to win a $25 everything gift card. So keep your eyes peeled for that in the chat. That link will also get sent out in the post-webinar email. And I also want to let folks know that our next webinar is coming up on July 31st, and we're going to cover everything you need to know to get started with the Registered Disability Savings Plan. If you want to find out more about all of OCO's programs and services, you can visit our website, you can follow us on social media, or subscribe to our newsletter. So thanks again, Gloria. Let's get to our Q&A. If folks have any questions or comments or things they'd like to ask Gloria, now is your chance. Feel free to put that into the chat. We've got lots of great comments, and thanks for a fantastic presentation. One of the questions that came through, Gloria, when you were talking about risky medications, is if you can share a little bit more about what other medications might be considered risky. You talked a bit about the sleeping meds. Are there others that you're comfortable sharing that might fall into that category?
Yeah, sure. Risky medications, so sleeping pill is a good example because there's a whole a different approach we can take, but it goes depending on the medication you're on. You might have medications that are more risky because they could be creating more side effect for you. I'm thinking risky medication could be like if initially it could be simple as like if you have pain or arthritis, individual might just think, okay, I'll just take an anti-inflammatory, and then I would just just take that like twice a day. So then it might just create a stomach problem because if you're not really used to take those anti-inflammatory, and then you might decide I'll just take that and I will just don't go for my walk anymore, and then it's so important in arthritis or I know I'm getting there, and then you want to keep moving. You want to have, if you can't, obviously you keep running or keep walking, keep going outside. So instead of like, you can take the medication initially, but just to make sure there's other healthier alternative like walking, like exercising. Also, if you have an injury, if you know, a lot of you can go to physiotherapy and then take your medication at the beginning for pain or inflammation. But then gradually, as you go to physio, as you exercise, then you can decrease those medication, because a lot of medication can create more side effects. So that's one other example that comes to me. And then it gets riskier when there's a lot of not combo, but mix of medication. So it all depends, but you can ask when you do your medication review, you know, is there medication in there that are at risk of, you know, creating more side effect or more harm? And I'm thinking the medication hurts your gut, right? Like your stomach, or like you may not, you may get heartburn, and then so you take those, for example, anti-inflammatory. Then they're supposed to be coated and help that, and then all of a sudden you have to take a proton pump inhibitor or like an over-the-counter like Tums or something. So then you're on this cascade of hiding those drugs, right? Versus like trying to, like I said, stay fit, exercise, and maybe take your medication with food. So this is such a great question. It's so broad. So this is just some element. Thank you for the question.
No, thank you. That's great. You also shared a bit in your talk about, you know, not just prescription medication, but vitamins and supplements, holistic approaches to well-being, which we know a lot of folks practice. We hear things like take vitamin D, if the sunshine vitamin, or, you know, for women's health, a lot of different medications. But sometimes I think we might, and I'm certainly one of these people that hears about them and just sort of starts taking them. And it's not always done in consultation with a doctor, nurse practitioner, or a pharmacist. So do you have any recommendations for folks who might be interested in starting to take vitamins, supplements, over-the-counter medications, in terms of who they can speak to help them figure out, you know, with the medications I have, what's the best time of day, frequency? Like,
Yep.
is there someone that folks can access to get that information?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. And like I said, the pharmacist is the most accessible healthcare provider, right? So they're in the pharmacy. You don't need an appointment. You walk in, and then they're busy, of course, but now a lot of pharmacy have a little consulting area. There's kind of a plexiglass. So you can just go stand there and say, not stand there, but just go there and just say, I'd like to speak to a pharmacist because I've read that I should be taking vitamin D and calcium. I'm 50 and older, you know. Does that make sense with the medication that I'm taking? And then the pharmacist can pull your file and then would be able to help you with that. So I would say for sure the pharmacist. In like those, they used to call CCAC, I don't know what they're called anymore, when they have nurses on staff. I think that the name, I know the name, it's too long, I can't remember it, but I still say CCAC. So they have nurses on staff there, so you can go there and they're very well informed also. So I would say, yeah, and never think that some of those over-the-counter and vitamins, and I would have to say, make sure you buy it from a good source, right? You have to watch for, if you buy stuff on the internet, you know, some is good, but some, you know, there's example of you know, I think there was an example recently, someone was taking medication they bought on the internet, and then it was one of those weight loss medication that I will not mention, but they've ordered it online and it was not really the proper medication. There was contamination and the person ended up having critical, you know, ending up in the emergency, and then it realized it was so make sure you have a good source. Medication are really important. So even your vitamins and the traditional medicine, I'm just awe about everything there is. I'm no expert on that, but just make sure you talk with your pharmacist. If they were there, we're available. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great tip too about the source of your vitamins and supplements. We are living in a world of, you know, online shopping and these things, and it's an expensive world to live in right now. So folks are always looking for deals and affordability. But, if we treat our vitamins and supplements like we treat our prescription medications, it's important to keep, the quality there, as well as knowing what we're taking and how it all interacts. And thanks to us folks in the chat. So the CCAC, and many of us still call it that. So you're not alone, Gloria.
It's Ontario Health.
It was, and then it went to become the LIN, and now it's Ontario Health at Home for folks that are wondering.
True. Ontario Health at Home. I know because we dealt with them when my father-in-law ended up being in a nursing home, and then we would always say, oh, the CCAC lady called. And then they would say, no, she's not the CCAC person. She's someone else. Well, and I said, it's the same. Anyway. Okay, good. Yes. Thanks in the chat.
No, it's great. We'll clarify it for everyone. And just so that folks can be super clear, Ontario Health at Home is your publicly funded home care provider, and everyone has access to that in your community.
Yep. Great. They're doing great jobs. Yeah.
They're doing great stuff. Yes. In your talk, you did a really great job of walking us through, types of questions to ask the pharmacist and how to do that medication review or that med check, particularly for those of us that might be on a long list, or our care recipients that are on a long list of meds and vitamins and supplements. Question that I have, this is a bit of a selfish question, is how do pharmacists connect back with primary care? So in a caregiver world, sometimes we have our primary care team that's prescribing medications for our care recipients. Sometimes we have specialists that are prescribing. You see this as a pharmacist behind the scenes with different, prescriptions coming through from different sources. If I'm coming to you as my pharmacist and you're saying, oh, we're going to change these things, how do I know that that has been communicated back to my teams? Who does that? How does it work?
So as part of the med check, I mean, it's no big surprise. Pharmacists all have like a sophisticated software and computer system where we can see. So after a pharmacist does a med check, or that's how I was doing it. After you do a med check, like you have, so everything is logged into your profile. It's a long questionnaire that we fill in. And then you would add at the bottom of the med check, there is a section that you make the recommendation, or you share what, if you say, you know what, Gloria, like this pill, like I feel I'm dizzy when I take it, then I would put those notes in there. And then saying to the doctor, like, consider revisiting or adjusting, or because Katie is saying she has this kind of effect. And this gets faxed to the doctor's office. So the doctor office would get that. To my knowledge, it only goes to the physician. I don't know if we would go to a nurse, or probably if someone has identified a caregiver on the list, because you have that on the med check. Is that the person or the caregiver? And then you see if the physician received the information and might decide to change, then this gets faxed back to the pharmacy. And then the pharmacy will say, okay, your doctor, Katie, has adjusted your medication. Will likely call you or let you know. And then we can adjust. And then when you come in, we will just consult with you and explain to you what was happening. So it's transmit electronically between the pharmacy I was at with the caregiver. So there is, and then the prescription comes in, and then they just enter in. We have all the information. So it's important. We would log, like, if you take other medications, you take vitamins, you take all of that. It's all in your profile. And then you can ask your pharmacist to print that for you and give it to you as well. And if there's no follow-up, then you won't hear anything. And the med check would be done on a yearly basis. However, if for some reason you get admitted to the hospital for an unforeseen condition, then if your medication are changed, when you leave the hospital, when I work in the hospital, you would get a list of your medications. So the hospital, it's not really talking so well, the hospital system with the community system, but you would get a discharge with your medication. So you take that to your pharmacy. And at that point, your pharmacist might decide, okay, I think it's a good time to review your meds now because it has changed because of your hospitalization or your condition, or women that are expecting babies. So any major life event, then it just helps to go back and review.
That's great. That's really helpful. I think, especially as caregivers, we often have multiple providers in place. You talked about the hospital piece, and we're already really busy. So
Yeah.
it's great to know that as a pharmacist, you're sort of organizing and coordinating some of that in the background, and we don't always need to go back and make follow-up phone calls to the specialists and doctors, and that we're getting that support from pharmacy and physicians and specialists. So I think that's really helpful. It was very helpful for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We did have a follow-up question around the vitamin piece when we talked a bit about, reputable sources. Is there a list, a website, a place where folks can go? I think we're kind of dipping a little bit into privatized, services here. So I'm not sure if that exists, but is there a source where people might be able to find, like, we know with a bit more confidence that these are vitamins and supplements that we can trust?
Yeah. Well, there's obviously the vitamins that are in your pharmacy. You know, they came from a source. As far as that's a really good question. You know, I might have to do a bit of more research and get back to you. I don't know on top of my head if I could recommend one. I know when I do search, like my searching criteria, are very different and strict, and then I could kind of tell things not because I'm smarter or whatever, but it's my background that I would say I don't trust this site, or and I shouldn't say that. But so yeah, so I can look into it and can get back to you. But right now, top of my head, I don't
Oh,
really have. Yeah,
that's okay. No, I appreciate that. And I know it's a complex question. There are a lot of distributors that
exactly.
provide these. And I think as a great first step, if folks are interested in starting to explore vitamins, or that's what's recommended by a doctor, a nurse practitioner, somebody in your medical team, the pharmacy is a great place to start
Yeah,
to
and
find
I
some
don't
of
know,
those.
sorry, I just thought of maybe nutritionists or dietitian might know a lot about that because they're more expert when it comes to that. So
Mm.
maybe someone in the chat has some idea. But the thing I would say is, like, if you have a prescription medication, or if you have a vitamin or supplement that you say it's $15 or $25 in all the retail pharmacy, and if you see it for $5 online, I would say you could question if is it really, and then there's the whole cross-border shopping, which is also something that I don't encourage. So yeah, so I would say if it's really, really less expensive, I would say maybe question it, like, and ask your pharmacist again, or your dietitian or your nutritionist maybe, or yeah, they would know, probably they would know. We focus a lot on prescription medication.
Yeah, if the deal is too good to be true,
Yeah.
it might be too good to be true.
Yeah. I think it goes for a lot of online purchase, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you. That's great. And we are coming to a close, but we did have another question that might be a little bit tricky for you to respond to. So we are not able to give any individual advice to folks, but we do support a number of caregivers join our webinars who are supporting people with dementia, dementia related illness. And some of those individuals do need to take antipsychotic medications. I suspect those could be under that umbrella of risky medications. I'm not sure. But do you have general comments or thoughts around some of those medications that are prescribed for persons living with dementia or dementia related illness?
Yeah, that's a great question, and dementia and confusion in the elderly is really challenging, just like any mental illness. But I think there's more and more focus on understanding it better, and then prescribing. A lot of elderly could have like some confusion. It could be as simple as they have a urinary tract infection, and then you take care of that, and then that would help their confusion. It has to be also very much diagnosed. There's dementia, there's confusion, there's Alzheimer's. Sometimes it's very difficult to know exactly what's the condition of the elderly. Some of the medication, if given very early on, will show some benefits, but after a while, as the disease progresses, sometimes it's not necessarily in the best interest to continue the medication. There's also more and more publication around benzodiazepine overuse in elderly. I know my dad was on benzodiazepine to sleep for like 50 years, and I would say to him, like, Papa, like, I don't think this is working anymore, but so it is extremely challenging as with the elderly. And then for any dementia or Alzheimer, it has to be under the strict care of the family physician, the mental health team, the specialists. So I know it's a great question, and I'm probably not answering because there is no, I know because we've been through it in the family, and it's very disconcerting, and you think the medication is going to make them better. Sometimes it does, and sometimes the disease just continue to progress.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I know it's a really general question, so it's hard to respond to specifically. So I appreciate that. And I think, one of the big takeaways from our talk today is if you have questions about your medication and you can't ask your doctor or the prescribing person directly, go to your pharmacist and chat more with them. They're going to have more information about your individual situation and the medications that you or your care recipient are on. Well, I think that wraps up all of our questions in our chat box today. So, Gloria, again, I want to thank you so much for joining us. You've given us a lot to think about. You've given us a lot of really practical tips and resources and advice. I've learned a lot. Our audience has learned a lot, and there's a lot of gratitude and thanks in the chat box. So, thanks again for spending some time with us today.
You're very welcome, and go on the deprescribing website as well. And thanks everyone. I know it's the holiday, it's busy, so thanks for joining us. I really appreciate, and I hope you enjoyed the talk. And thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks again, Gloria. And thanks to everyone who's taken time out of their day to join us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next webinar.